right, guys, thank you very much. This is the first in a series of the artist series that we put on every semester. I'm very happy to have Mr. Michael Pellera here. And Mike is the chair of the jazz music program at the New Orleans Center for the Creative Arts. And if you don't know where that place is, a lot of our students are actually come from there. We have many students and some very famous students. Probably the most notable one is Jonathan Baptiste, who's the music director on the Colbert Show. But anyway, Mike had a hand in instructing all these people. He's a fantastic teacher. I met Mike in the mid-'70s at Berklee College of Music, so we have a long history. And then for some reason he decided to spend a little time in New York and then come live in New Orleans, and he's been living in New Orleans for the past, 25 years or so.
Longer than that, since oh, you mean since I've been back?
Yeah, since you've been back.
Yeah, probably 25 years.
Yeah. And I consider him to be just a brilliant composer, teacher, piano player. He's an amazing guy. Has influenced me in my music for sure. And I'm sure he's going to have a lot of interesting things to say to everybody. How about our
Thanks, Steve. And I want to start out saying you're all lucky to have such a great staff here. Of course, Steve's phenomenal guitarist, composer, educator, and he's had a great impact on me. When I first started teaching, I had no idea what I was doing, and he had already been at Loyola for a lot of years, so we were in this environment a lot, and I picked up a lot on how he taught, so it had influence on me. Of course, you got great Brian Seeger. He's amazing. I get on his website, The Shed, sometimes, things he's got going. I consider Victor Atkins probably the best all-around pianist in town. Sorry, David Torkanowski. And sorry, Michael Pellera. But anyway. Yeah. Of course, Ed Peterson's, I mean, he's got so much music, it's mind-boggling. And of course, the great Hank Mackey, who's influenced everybody, was teaching. And so you're very lucky to be here. I'm glad to see some of my former NOCA students. When you tell me you've been here 3 years, 4 years, I'm shocked, because it seems like yesterday. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about today is working with transcribed material. So we all know that you need to transcribe. We all have our favorite players. But how can we take it a little farther? How can we get the most out of whatever we've been working on? The great Dave Liebman said, you don't need to know a lot of licks. You just need to know the ones you know really well, so that they become germs of other ideas that you're going to, So let's just start out saying, what is something you would do if you transcribed? We're just going to deal with the first three phrases on that Charlie Parker sheet. And if somebody, is there an extra one floating around so I could have it? I mean, these are classic Charlie Parker omni phrases. So let's just say you transcribe these, and I kind of have every category represented. There's a major phrase, there's a two-chord, a Dorian phrase, a mixo phrase, and I assume you're studying the melodic minor and when to do it up a half step and all those kind of rules. So we're not going to go into that today. And then there's a flat nine category, and then there's something that's like over the key, okay, like a blues phrase.
You mind if I ask a question right off the bat? Because this is really interesting, because this is something we've been having a conversation about. There's a lot of transcriptions we do here. We tend to transcribe entire solos, which is really great, and you try to perform the actual transcription. But I think that what you're probably trying to get at is the fact that you should try to glean certain things from the solo that you can use, that you own, and it becomes source material for your improvisation.
Right. So yeah, right off the bat, we live in a day and age where we can get on the internet right now. I can hold my iPhone right here and say Herbie Hancock solo, specific tunes. Great. There's 32 bars, there's 64 bars, but how can you narrow it down to something that you can work on that can actually be part of your playing? So first of all, you want to scrutinize it and say, well, why would I want to practice that? Or you want to be saying, I definitely want to be practicing that, just something about it that intrigues me. So we're going to assume, for the sake of all that, just like the Omni book. I mean, it's just pages and pages of Charlie Parker. So I just took out that one little major. So can anyone give me the copy back and look on with somebody? Not Steve.
Sorry. I got several. Does anyone need a copy? Yeah. I think that's okay. You got a different copy of something. You got Lady Bird. I don't have that.
Yeah. We were going to play. Yeah, what I want to do today is, talk about these various things and actually apply it to a tune. So,
Take your Lady Brown's and a couple more copies. I'll be right back.
my personal issue was, I would do a lot of transcribing and I would keep notebooks and I would, eventually put them in categories. But the problem was I would only play the phrase exactly the way it was, okay? So, as a great Keith Jarrett once said, if you're doing that, you're really not even improvising. You're basically just saying chord, this phrase, chord, So how can we take it, a step farther than that? How can we find the phrases within the phrases? Everybody knows the term harmonic rhythm. What would your definition of that be?
How fast the chords move.
Yeah, the duration of the chord. So that's another thing. We sit there and there's a one-bar phrase, and maybe we take it through the keys, and but all of a sudden we're playing giant steps, and it's only 2 beats per chord. So that's another consideration. So if we have to play a long time on a chord, then we need a lot of information to sequence, or if we're double timing it, twice as much information. So anyway, we just took, let's just deal with the first 3 phrases on the page. So if you transcribe that major phrase, what would some of the things you might do with it to be fluent in it? Anybody? What would you do? You play this phrase by Charlie Parker, you're just blown away. You just got to have it. You want it to be part of your playing, or you want to play in a bebop style, and you say that is representative of playing bebop. So what might you do with that phrase to get it on your fingers? Anybody? All right, so you said taking it all keys. So how would you transpose? No, how would you transpose? Like what keys how would you do
You
it?
could start with fourths, right?
Okay, you could start with the cycle of fourths, but that's only one cycle. What's the smallest cycle you could transpose? Half steps, right? Okay, so that's 1. And then what? Major seconds, whole steps, then you move to minor thirds, major thirds, then you get to the cycle fourths, and what's the last one? Tritone, okay? So if you can do that, that means you really own that. Whatever's thrown at you in the music, assuming it was a 1-bar phrase, you'd be ready to react to it, right? Okay, so that's good. We've done that, we got it under our fingers, but we still only have one thing. We got this one little phrase. Sorry, only made a mistake because we're there. Taking it through the keys, starts on B1, takes 3 beats to play it. Great. No matter what instrument we play, that's a lot of work, But what else can we do with it? Play it backwards, retrograde?
Yeah, or I was thinking, like opposite side.
Oh, you want to invert the whole thing and everything?
Yeah.
Wow.
I wanted to say something to the guitar players, because guitar players, okay, it's not that big of a deal to go up in half steps, right? But guitar players need to do this in different positions, and bass too. I assume that's even more of a problem, There's so many different ways of playing the same idea on a guitar. So your challenge is going to be not necessarily taking it through the intervals as much as it's going to be taking it through different configurations of fingerings. So just to throw that out there, because it's a different...
Yeah, I usually bust guitarists and bass players because I see them moving up and down, and it does seem easy, but yes, I'm well aware there's other positions, and that does make it difficult. So you must force yourself to do that, and hopefully the intervals will make you do that. Even piano, even though you got to come up with different fingers and the notes are going to change, it's easy for a pianist to see up a half step. Probably by the time he gets to major third, it gets a little more difficult. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, well, you could take it through a song, I guess, and try to apply the lick.
Yeah, we're going to do that, but I'm just saying we're working on major, and you should think of it that way.
Yeah.
You're going to see major a lot. You're going to see Dorian a lot, Mixolydian. And then the melodic minor modes, obviously, first thing you learn is not an altered chord, but you get those down. Yep.
You move it over by an eighth note.
I'm sorry?
You move it over by an eighth note. So start.
Good. Now we're getting somewhere. That's kind of what I wanted to get to today. Okay. Did everyone hear what he said? He said move it. So we would call that rhythmic displacement. That's very important. So before we assume that this melody could be played an eighth note earlier, because it doesn't always work out. Some of them are kind of designed, especially if something was a bebop scale or something's kind of designed. But let's just take the integrity of this idea, which is meant to land wherever it's landing on each tone. And let's just say we took, well, it's a downbeat phrase, correct? Mm-hmm. It's inherently a downbeat phrase. So that means there's 3 other downbeats we could play it, and it's going to feel completely different when we play it on those beats. So if I just did it like a bar in C and then a bar in E flat, it could be like downbeat. So what if I played the second phrase on 2? So completely different it felt? Okay, so you need to explore that, because a lot of times we're not as comfortable in the rhythmic realm as drummers. Because, and I'm not making fun of drummers in any way, but obviously if you weren't hanging on the chords, you didn't have an instrument with keys, what are you going to do? You're going to sit there and count. And you're going to get really good at feeling 4 bars, 8-bar phrase, know when it's a 2, when it's, and feeling that. Just like comping instruments need to explore the full spectrum of, some people think of it as 8/8 time. You got 4 downbeats and 4 upbeats. Okay, so we want to do that. Let's assume it's a 2-bar phrase. So, you know, our eye sees C major 7 for 2. Get to F minor 7 on beat 1. But that's only one way of doing it, right? And that's what I think frustrates people sometimes, when they're not as comfortable as they could be. So, 2-bar phrase. We'll start on 1 and then 2. 1, 2. So just by doing that, you're creating symmetry in what you're playing, but you created rhythmical variation, even though it doesn't seem like much. So obviously I'd move to 3 and maybe even 4, assuming I had enough time. But I also want to experiment with starting early. Have you ever heard the expression forward motion? There was a great pianist in New York that I studied with many years ago named Hal Galper. And his definition of forward motion would be anticipating the next chord by 1 to several 8th notes. Okay? So sometimes we don't think of that. Our eye sees, you know, get to that chord on beat 1, but maybe we'll play an 8th note ahead, or 2 8th notes ahead. If you check out bebop, you'll notice that between beat 3 and 4, if they're going to anticipate it, usually is in that realm. They don't usually go earlier, whereas it got to be Coltrane and, you know, the modern modal people, they'd play a whole bar ahead. And Bill Evans was one of the innovators in that, just freely playing with the harmonic rhythm. And nowadays, people let it hang over. So they're just taking a suggestion by what's on the page or what the composer gave them, and they're totally free within that. So check it out when I start a beat early. So in other words, I'm still keeping this as a downbeat phrase. Okay? I'm playing exactly what Charlie Parker played, but you can feel that it felt completely different on 2. So I'll start it on 4. 1, 2, 3. We also call that playing across the bar line. So you're free with it. Now I'll start 2 beats early. Start on 3. Okay? So felt completely different. Crossing the bar line, I've introduced the motif, because if you're playing, Ellis Marcellus said something really great one day. He said, there's this myth about what makes a tune recognizable. He says people recognize symmetry. So take a song like, I heard that twice. Then they do a variation. Symmetry. They have to hear repetition. And those songs that we still play were written for basically people that were singing in a chorus of a show, or they were a part-time dancer and a little bit of a singer. They don't have a huge range, but we love those songs, and they're very, you know, symmetrical. So if your playing lacks that, if you're not developing motifs over time, it's kind of sensory overload to the audience. Oh, that's great, but now it's something new. Now it's something new, you know. But the really great players, and especially the modern players nowadays, they'll develop ideas to a level that, you know, people in bebop never would do. Okay, so now we got the phrase down. It's a downbeat phrase. So now we're going to do what I call the Barry Harris technique. Anybody know where I'm going with this? Have you ever seen any of those, Barry Harris films? What does he do with a phrase like that? takes a note off the beginning. Okay? Some people call that ellipsis. Dot, dot, dot. You know, you're internalizing that whole thing, but you're not playing the whole thing. Another example of that would be, I'm playing a minor pentatonic in C, but I leave out the E flat. Makes me play different patterns. If you listen to Chick Corea, you'll see, I've seen it time and time again. He'll play a scale across the piano, like almost 2 octaves, and 1 note's missing. So I don't know if he consciously does that or he hears it that way. So that's one of his techniques. So now, it sounds different. It's an upbeat phrase. So I keep it in its integrity, and now it's starting on beat, on the and of 1. And that's what Barry Harris is saying. Now you're not so predictable. You're starting on different beats. So now I'm starting on the tonic. Okay, so if I start the first one on the and of 1 and the next one on the and of 4, I got this. So you see where I'm going with this? This could be what Dave Liebman's talking about. Do you really know this phrase? Could you start, 3 notes later? And then you would do the same thing on the back end, assuming the phrase ends in some place that makes it sound logical. Let's leave the last note off. That's a complete thought, right? Sounds good? So. Okay, so you see I'm displacing, leaving a note off, the back end. So that's where we're headed today. But I'd like to actually do it. I'd like to actually run some of these through a key and apply it to a tune. Okay, we're just going to take 3 phrases that are on the sheet. So why don't we work on the major phrase first? We'll apply it to this tune. We're not going to take it to all the keys. We're going to look at this sheet, and it says, what major keys do we need to know to play this song? C, A flat. I'm not going to worry too much about the last 2 bars where it's 2-beat harmonic rhythm. We're just going to do 1, 2, 3, 5, which is a whole concept unto itself. So we need C and A flat. So let's practice C and A flat. Anybody wants to participate, get their instrument out, we'll give it a try.
Yeah, let's have some horn players, some guitar players, amps, bass players. You want drums too?
Yeah, I'd like to play the tune if everybody's comfortable doing that, but I don't want it, yeah.
Yeah, I did. Did I give you all the copies out?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Steve.
Whoever's in this class at this time should be participating. Okay, that's who I really want to participate. I appreciate everybody coming today. Who else needs a ladybird? Yeah. Okay.
You guys want to come up here? Got a music stand? What's that? We'd like to have a drummer, yeah. Is there a drummer in the class? I think Steve wants everybody in the class to play. Okay, so let's just play the phrase in quarter notes once and then eighth notes twice. Let's just work on C and then A flat. Here we go. 1, 2, C. Quarter notes. Eighths twice. A flat quarter notes. Twice. All right, so let's just play on 2 bars of C, 2 bars of A flat. Try not to play it on beat 1. Don't play it as an upbeat phrase. Feel either ahead on a downbeat or after the one on a downbeat. Just keep the integrity of the phrase, which is downbeat. Yes, that technique would be, a technique might be, hey, maybe this Parker phrase does sound great as an upbeat. One. That doesn't sound bad, but we're going to play it as Charlie Parker played, but don't hit it on one. Okay? Two measures of C, 2 measures of A flat. Just play the phrase. Ready? There we go. 1, 2. You want to go first? 2, 3, 4. Ready for the A flat? Back to, okay, yeah. Just don't worry about it. Leave space and pick your next spot. Don't keep repeating it. So, in other words, the A flat caught you by surprise. Maybe you would have started early. So just play it once per bar and then see what's up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Who started ahead most? Who played ahead of the next chord? Who started on 3 or 4 of the next chord? I'm sorry? I thought Xavier played the most, but you did it too. Okay, so a lot of you might be aware of this. All I'm saying is make sure you would explore the full spectrum. Alvin Baptiste used to tell a great story about Coleman Hawkins. Coleman Hawkins said, I can listen to somebody in a couple minutes and I can tell what beats they start on. So what does that mean?
Where they hear the phrase coming in.
You know, you might not realize that you start all your phrases on and of 4, 1, or the end of 1. You never wait to go 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1. Okay? So you owe it to yourself to explore the full spectrum and do it with this kind of practice where you're moving across the bar. You might find that you don't play ahead that much. You could have a lot more rhythmical interest in your playing. Okay? So let's leave the first note off. Let's practice quarter note once, eighth twice. So now we're starting on the tonic, right? We're going 1. Okay? So we'll start on beat 2, so it has the same feel to it. Here we go. 2, 3, 4, 1. Eighth twice. 4, 1. A flat. Again. Speed it up a little bit. So now you got a downbeat or an upbeat. We're still keeping the integrity of Charlie Parker's phrases, where he's landing, when he gets on whatever tones and what. So see what you hear. But like I said, just stick to that for now. Do a little faster. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Play the downbeat or the upbeat. downbeat once in a while too. The original. Sorry. Got it. Yeah, so the original, like we did last time, or this.
Oh, okay.
Original or one note off. Try it again. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So even though you might practice that every day and you comping behind something and they go, you might not even recognize that phrase. Okay, and that's only one note off, right? So if I start leaving him off at the back end, or that's a complete thought. So you get the big picture, notes off the front, notes off the end, keep going from downbeat to upbeat, you keep moving across. See what it does. All you can do in jazz is to practice in a certain way that hope that it will come out in your playing. You get kind of program the computer. Because you might forget what the original phrase is, and that's the point. But I can't speak for Steve, but when we were young, all I did was play the original phrase. And you need to have a lot of vocabulary to play a whole night, if that's all you're doing, okay? So find the phrases within the phrases and get comfortable in the rhythmic spectrum and think about what beat you're starting on. And explore the full spectrum, just like a drummer would. The drummer's going to go across the bar and hit all the accents, get that full spectrum. All right, let's try the minor phrase.
Before you go to that one, just out of curiosity, now when you're talking about this one being major phrase, do you ever take that phrase and then use it on other diatonic chords and sing like A minor?
Right.
I'd be curious to see what that phrase sounds like over A minor, for
right.
instance. You know,
Yeah. Well,
that or something, you know.
that would be, yeah, definitely a next step. And sometimes people call that conversion formula. Like I heard that come from Hank. I never heard anybody use that, but I like that. Like with the melodic minor up a half step, and when it's up a fifth, he used the phrase conversion formula. So did you know that phrase? I never heard that phrase before.
But some in his later lessons,
yeah, no, somebody credited it to Hank, and now I must say it like 20 times a day. So yeah, so that was another subject. I'm glad Steve brought it up that I wanted to talk about. So if a major phrase is going to work over minor, what relationship would you look for? What minor is going to be closest to C major?
Aeolian.
Which one?
Aeolian. Dorian. Aeolian.
You nailed it. A lot of people say D minor. Why? Because it's the same scale and it's a mode up, but it's not the function. When you're playing D minor, you don't want it. I mean, you don't play D minor over C because it has the F being so strong, and that's the clashing note that comes from the dominant and whatever. So yes, if major is going to work over minor, you look for the relative minor relationship. And the only difference...
Can you hear that? Could you play just a little, play a couple of phrases,
Yeah.
that same phrase, but you play it over A minor?
But just as a, even just theoretically knowing if it'll work, you say, what is the difference between a C major and let's say an A Dorian? I'm sorry, yeah, is that F or F sharp, right? So we're talking about function because that's another formula where you play A minor Dorian over C to get a Lydian. Well, we won't get into that. So if it doesn't have the 4, it's probably going to work over, you know, that minor. So yes, now you got an A minor, and it's going to start at what degree?
6, 4,
Oh, the 4. So you got A minor. Sounds pretty good, right? All right. So let's try that on the minors that we're going to need to play this song. We're going to need an F minor, right? And one of my favorite teachers, his name is Harold Danko. He's a really great educator. And he said to me when I met him many years, he says, I don't practice a lot, but I'm very organized. So he said, no matter how good your ears are, sometimes you got to spoon feed it. So you might have to say, find the 4, and hopefully you're going to hear it after that or find your way around. So we're going to play an F minor. What's the 4 of F minor? B flat, right? So let's do quarter notes once, eighth notes twice. F minor, 1, 2, 3, 4. Eighths twice. 1 note off. Starting a third. Starting a third. 3. Yeah. I can't remember. What did I do? Oh yeah. Sorry. 3 notes off. 2 notes off. 3, 4, 1. All right. So if you walk in the room and you hear this, there's no way you'd even remember this, or say, you know. So there's a perfect example. So now we're using on a different chord type. We found that our major could sometimes work over minor and vice versa. Okay, so usually look for that relative minor relationship. It's usually down a third, up a third kind of deal. No, did I say that right? No, if it's A flat major, then it's down a third. And if it's, a minor, you're looking up a third. All right, so we got an F. So let's just practice that first line. Why can I ignore the B flat 7? I keep turning on you guys, sorry. Let's just play the first line of the piece. Why can I ignore the B flat 7 and play the F Dorian, let's say, all the way through the 2-5? Anybody?
2-5 in that key.
I mean, 2 and 5 have a lot to do with each other. So when you convert, I mean, one of the classic things you're going to see in bebop is, you know, you see a B flat 7 and Charlie Parker's playing an F minor 7 up a 5th, or he's playing a 2-5 up a 5th. Or you see the minor and he's playing this Mixolydian stuff or whatever, if he even thought about it that way. Okay, so we're going to just be C for 2, and then F minor, B flat, but we'll just think F minor for 4. So just play around with the idea. See what it sounds like. Okay, here we go. First line only.
Anybody have Lady Bird and B flat?
I got it. Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Okay, why does everybody take it 3 times each? Same order. 1, 2. Anybody need it up here?
C to F minor.
You know the song?
C major 7 F minor.
Oh, you need an E flat?
No, I got it.
You got B flat part? All right, first line only. Just take it 3 times. See if you can just do this one phrase, notes off, starting a different beat, and then use the same phrase on the minor. At what interval are you looking for? Play it up a third, right? F minor equals A flat. All right, let's try it. And if you want to write in your little conversion, then write it in. I met Jerry Bergonzi, a great tenor player, one time, and I was like shocked when he told me this. He said, yeah, I did a record session with Mike Brecker. And while we were getting ready to play the piece, he wrote all the substitutions on his lead sheet that he was going to play. I was like, whoa, Mike Brecker did that? So it's like, okay. So if you need to write the A flat up there, yeah, write it. So you get used to doing this. If it's something you even like, or if it's connecting anyway. So let's try it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Only one idea. Everybody can hear it, and you can see how it helps you to play across the bar lines, continue one phrase for a long period of times, which obviously is the ultimate. Let's try the minor phrase.
That's really interesting what he's saying, because again, you know, you're bombarded with so much information when you transcribe an entire person's solo, and you put a lot of your energy into trying to play it like the person, which the best thing you learn from that, for sure, is how people phrase, and you know, it really develops your ear. But you can take one little section of that solo and make so much music with that one little phrase, little melodic phrase or cell phone. You always just call them cell phones or something.
Cells, yeah.
Cells, melodic cells or whatever. So you can make so much music just with the variations of those, you know, those fragments. So, you know, when you do a solo, when you transcribe a solo, just go through it and find the pieces that you analyze and then try to take it through what Mr. Pellera is saying, you know, take it through these permutations.
And get to be real particular about it. You know, just because Charlie Parker played it or some great artist doesn't mean it appeals to you. I read a great quote by a guy named Mal Waldron. You ever heard of him? He was Billie Holiday's accompanist for many years. And he said, you like it because it's you. It's already like you. It appeals to you. Why would I want to practice it, you know? And, you know, the older you get, the more you're thinking about it. You might take your little notebook of phrases and say, I don't want to play that anymore. You know, you got to, like, love it to want to do it. So before we add anything else, let's just take those numbers, 9-1, 7-1, 3-5, let's make it minor. So taking the phrase as it existed, playing major over minor, exploiting that relationship of the relative minor, very similar, you know. But now we're going to take the same phrase and go, it's going to sound great, right? So let's just do that only on the F minor for now. Let's do it on all the minors. We got F minor, B flat, minor. We got 4 minors, right? F. So the first 3 are lined up right on the page. Third measure, third measure, third measure. You see them? And then the last one is the first measure of the 4th line. So good. So let's do quarter notes twice and then 8th notes twice. F minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. Original phrase in 8th notes. 1 note off. 2 notes. That sounds very different, right? Wouldn't even recognize it. All right, next key is B flat. Original phrase, quarter notes. 3, 4. B flat minor again. 8th original. 1 note off. 2. All right, everybody got that? All right, let's go to, let's just play that much of the piece, even though, so that's 8. We're going to play a 10-bar phrase, okay? We're going to go all the way to the end of the A flat before it hits A minor. Just that much of the song, okay? So you see what we're talking about? We're taking, you take the notes off, now a down became an up, move it around, after one, before one, you get a huge spectrum of things that you can do. Taking notes off beginning and the end. It's not one phrase, it's countless phrases. It's phrases within the phrases, okay? All right, let's try that much of the song. Everybody try it twice? So it's gonna feel a little weird, get to the end of the A flat and go back, but let's see if we can keep that together, okay? So here we go, twice. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Start again. Play the 2-5 to A flat over and over again. See if you can hear what I'm doing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry. Anybody hear what I'm doing?
Try to,
I mean, that's just another.
Minor of the chapter?
I did I guess you call it trisome sub 2/5. Did B flat minor 7, E minor A, since it's an E minor, I could take the same motif, right? So, I mean, that's obviously another substitution, or whatever, but it goes to show you. So everybody heard the variations, and you know, it's just one idea. So you get the big picture.
How would you organize now without getting? I know this is kind of an academic thing. We're trying to do this repetitively or whatever. But how, in a real life situation, how long would you stay with an idea before you morph it into something else or move to a new idea?
Well, I mean, that's a matter of taste. Aaron Parks was in town, who's like my favorite pianist, and obviously I'm probably old enough to be his grandfather, but he happened to know a young woman named Megan Swartz, and I said, well, connect me with him, you know, I'll pay him for the lesson, whatever. And I just wanted to like sit down with this young man because I was like, I'm just blown away by his playing. Unfortunately, I think he's one of those genius people that maybe can't impart everything, and I always hate just playing in a solo piano situation. So I just played a recording of me playing some trio with John Vodakovich and a great bass player named Bill Huntington, and we were going a little crazy on the blues. And it was just really funny because, you know, and I know he felt a little embarrassed saying it, you know, because I'm older than him. But he just said, well, you have a lot of great ideas, but you don't develop it, you know, enough, you know. And, you know, so to his aesthetic, to the modern aesthetic, you know, and I'm more of a bebopper, play the blues, you know, Chick Corea, Bud Powell, whatever. To the modern aesthetic, wasn't following the cell, you know, long enough, which is kind of a new trend. So that's, you know, your choice, obviously. But, you know, you have to have some, as Ellis would say, symmetry, or your solos are kind of like, you know, all over the map. So you can't really say how long you would do that. It's up to your personal aesthetic, you know, because I've seen people just really run with a ball. I mean, Sonny Rollins was probably the first one, wouldn't you say, that to really do it to a larger extent than anyone else would, you know, would develop it.
Well, like on a song like this is almost like a modern blues form in a way, you know, because it's a short.
Yeah.
You know, would you think like maybe like one motive per chorus, maybe to develop a motive per chorus, maybe, and then maybe switching. You know, I'm trying to stay on subject at least for a course of the tune because it's a short tune.
Yeah.
Or a blues or whatever. You know.
Or keep coming back to an idea that you introduced or something. So I mean, that's personal taste, and like I said, there's a lot of history behind us. You know, if you take Aaron Parks's, what he said, and you could even say a classic record like One Finger Snap, Herbie. He said, well, Herbie didn't develop motifs, you know, to that extent, but it's still, to whatever aesthetic, one of the most amazing solos anybody ever heard. So obviously that's a matter of choice. But yeah, I mean, I find myself as an older player, you know, who started earlier, trying to do that more, or at least when I practice, because you're trying to influence your playing. I mean, that's what all this is about, influence your playing, you know. Substitute that with, you know, John Coltrane phrase number 65, or Wayne Shorter, or Josh Redman, or Mark Turner, and just see what that person did, and take it through all the keys, and, you know, break it down, what 3-note, 4-note patterns, what chromatic techniques, you know, any way you can analyze it, but just to really own it and to be able to put it into pieces. And, you know, like I say, always scrutinize what you're practicing. If you're keeping a notebook, I mean, even Sonny Rollins said, you got to keep a notebook because the great ideas only come once in a while. And that was Sonny Rollins. But he was just saying, he's going to play Sonny Rollins' ideas. He's past the stage of trying to play like Charlie Parker, or taking that language and, you know. So those guys would come to the table with a lot of stuff under their fingers. Maybe it was worked out, you know, I don't know, some of it. But he was playing Sonny Rollins' ideas, so his notebook, you know. But the rest of us are, you know, trying to come up with our own style and analyzing the masters, but really scrutinize it and say, all right, I'm working on major. You know, can I play a major a long period of time? Can I play it on a short period of time? And with the technology we have, you could take, you know, even your iReal book, play along, and type in C major for 4 measures, because maybe you can play a song like this. 4 measures apiece. But then it slows down to 2 measures, then it's 2/5, you know. So can you play shorter phrases on the giant steps type tunes, and can you sequence a lot of information on a song like that where it's 4 measures or 8 measures? That's why, you know, you see a 2-measure phrase, that's great. Maybe you'll double time it and play it in a 1 measure, but you have to find the shorter, you know, phrases that are, you know, within that. Anybody have any questions? I mean, I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. I'm just saying explore it, you know. Say to yourself, well, what beats do I start on? Gee, I thought I had a pretty good spectrum of where I start, but I listened to some recordings, and it was always 1 and a 1-2, you know, never waited to 3, never waited a whole bar, you know, to come in on the last 8th note or last 2 8th notes, or I find that I'm not starting ahead enough. Edward Simon came to Noka several years ago, and he introduced a concept that I hadn't thought of, and later Kenny Warner, everybody read Effortless Mastery. I mean, genius guy, met him many years ago in New York, and he's finally, they let things hang over, which I don't do naturally, you know. They freely play with the harmonic rhythm and just say, I'm going to let that, you know, E flat altered hang over way into the A flat, and maybe I'll play on the A flat shorter. So they're just totally playing around with the harmonic rhythm. So all these things will feed that, just being rhythmically solid, you know. Because I notice, you know, I teach a lot of younger kids, like when these guys were young, but, and I realize you think of the rhythm as the final frontier, like just get these notes down and get a couple licks, and, you know. But if you can teach them to play at an early age, to start on 4 or 1 or 2, I think their sense of, you know, the harmonic structure and the harmonic rhythm is going to be a little stronger. But it's a natural thing. You say, as soon as they start on 4, all of a sudden you can say their axis shift, and now they're hitting, you know, they're not hearing 1 anymore. They're feeling 4 as 1 or whatever. So you have, I'll get the drummer to go, boom, boom, like really pound it out so they can feel it. So they go 1, 2, now 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So you're not losing your place, because you get thrown off your axis. It's just, we have to train ourselves to be more rhythmically sophisticated. Maybe there's other cultures in the world that feel that, but most of us have a couple tempos that we can play. But a great classical player or a great jazz player is going to put that metronome on and play all the tempos or get as close to that as possible. So that's all I'm proposing here today. You know, just choose the information that fits your aesthetic at that time. Because tomorrow you might not want to play any of that stuff, you know. And you got to be careful what you practice. When they say you are what you eat, you are what you hear. I mean, I'm hearing little licks that I learned at 17 years old. I was like, come on. You know. Or you try to move on to some other styles of music. You know, I can remember when I first learned this phrase. I mean, I said, man, if I could own that, that's so cool. I wish I could play that. And now I hear it on gigs. I was like, come on, play that? This kind of gig? You know. But, you know, I might play with a singer tomorrow and she doesn't want to hear McCoy Tyner. So they'll pull that little guy out again, you know, and say, all right. And then you listen to the masters like Wynton Kelly and Bud Powell, and you realize they have so much. They never repeat themselves, like within that style. Just like the blues players in New Orleans, like Dr. John or Henry Butler, even within that style, it's always a little variation, another variation. So this is just the way, you know, people like to use the phrase practice organically. Fake your nervous system out. Forget what the original phrase was. Forget what beat Charlie Parker started on. Just take it through these keys, explore the rhythmic spectrum, and, you know, nobody can tell you what to play on the bandstand. You play what you hear, but probably if you haven't run the circuitry through your body, probably not going to pop out. Like Chick Corea says, I know what I'm going to play, but I don't know how I'm going to play it that evening. He's familiar with the elements, and he's probably got his little bag of tricks, which I'm sure is huge. And but they come to the table with a lot of stuff because they have that bebop aesthetic of, like, you really come to the table with a lot of stuff. You really studied records, and, you know, so when they moved into the modal realm and started studying classical music, they set an aesthetic, starting with Coltrane, that the rest of us have to aspire to. Doesn't matter, what instrument it is.
Yeah, I think the thing to take, from what Mike's presenting too is the fact that he's starting from a tangible melodic phrase to work with. Because so much in, jazz academic, we study scales and modes and arpeggios and things like that, and we look at chords on the page, and there's nothing about those chords that are going to tell you to play that particular line. You have to transcribe from Charlie Parker, you have to hear somebody play it, you have to have sort of an inclination that you want to say something, and saying something means having a short sentence to state. And so he's starting from this statement, and then you're using that as your source. And we'll try to make it work with all the different, chord changes and arpeggios or scales or whatever. And then, you can think in terms about how you can superimpose that on all the different things as well. But you have to start somewhere with an actual melodic phrase or a melody. I always say that, we're trying to make melodies on top of the chord changes. The goal is not just to make the changes, it's to make melodies on top of the would you mind y'all just play the tune? Man,
Yeah, I was going to suggest that. I mean, it's definitely getting to that point where, you have that.
We're kind of getting closer. We should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, you have that,
Play the tune,
we all have a certain capacity to concentrate and be in that mode. Then you got to, let it fly. And especially like teaching younger kids like I do, if you don't let it fly, man, they're going to crawl up the walls on you. But before we do that, I heard Steve make a similar quote a few years back, and I use it a lot. And this isn't the phrase he did, but he just said, knowing that it was a Dorian would make you play this? Something like that. That's what he's trying to say. This is a language, and yes, when Bird hit the scene, that was pretty major, because, the swing got a lot more complicated than trad jazz, but it wasn't as complicated as this, and it wasn't as intricate chromatically, and that's what he's saying. Start with somebody great played. Influence your own aesthetic. Maybe you come up with some stuff, But if you're going to play that, you're going to make something up 2 seconds later, it's got to stand up to that. So, in my mind, that's why we do that. First of all, you're hired to play a certain style of music. Can you play in a bebop style? I'm going to hire you to try to sound like Bud Powell. Well, great. But, so, get bop down. It's important. And you can see with people like Joe Henderson, when they're playing an F Lydian, he's playing a D minor G, because that's where they came from. They're looking for the 2/5s within the modes and things like that. It's going to serve you well. You want to play this tune or play something else? I'd love to hear you guys play.
I think I'll play this tune, and maybe everybody takes a couple of choruses, see if you can stay on the one, the rise, everything at one chorus, whatever the first statement is.
Yeah, let's play the tune. Have you guys played this tune before?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a standard. Everybody should know it. Where would you like to play the tempo? Would you count it, please?
1, 2, 1, 2, 2.
around town, I'm not sure when, but, you know, usually it accompanies a lot of the great singers like Lee and Chase and sort of men. Do you have anything coming up that you want to plug, or?
Done a couple things at Snug lately, but I can't think of anything offhand.
Yeah. Anyway, check him out. He's an amazing piano player, you know, especially we didn't even get into McCoy and Thelonious Monk, because he's a master of knowing that music as well, you know. So anyway.